Hey everyone, welcome back to the Rise and Above podcast. I'm your host, David Hess, and today I have a special guest with me. He's a friend of mine. I met him a couple years back from work. Anyways, he has a podcast as well called Two Brothers, One Mic, and he's coming on to share a little bit about that and a little bit about his journey with General Motors and some of the struggles that they've had to put him through. So I guess without further introduction, how are you doing today, Tony?
I'm doing pretty good. When you just said that about the struggles with General Motors and so on and so forth, I never really, being from Youngstown, Ohio, you're talking about the steel mills, you're talking about 20,000 jobs in 1978 going away, and would have probably been doubled by now today. Going down to like 60,000 people. So when you have that kind of situation, General Motors in Lordstown, along with Delphi Packard, and thousands of jobs. And so it was what everybody in that Tri-County area depended on for a living. Not just the people that worked at General Motors and the people that worked at Delphi, but the people all around, the suppliers, the mom and pop shops all around that, depended on that business from those people. Property taxes, for school levies and one of the biggest things to try to overcome when we got that announcement. But the way I look at it, like when you were talking about, overcoming that type of trial and tribulation, while I worked at General Motors, I started in 1993. And from 1993 to 2018,
it's the year I was born.
Yeah.
By the way.
Thanks, Dave. So from 1993 to 2018, in that time span of 25 years, 23 and a half of those years as full time, we probably saw 9 or 10 different plants come to our plant for that same reason. Janesville, Wisconsin, Dorville, Georgia, Shreveport, Louisiana, Oklahoma City, Mansfield, Ohio, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, even and these people came to us. Yeah, we saw, what it was like to have to deal with that situation. So when people, say to me, I get this a lot. My heart breaks for you, and I don't know how to take that. And sometimes people say I don't know how to take empathy, and the reason why is because you have to figure out how to adjust your sales. We talk about that on our podcast, me and my brother all the time. And you have to figure out, I'm not saying that it's easy, but it's not that I don't appreciate, the sympathy or the empathy. But, there's a lot of people around me that are dealing with what I'm dealing with, and there's people that don't work for GM that are immediately in my life, that are dealing with this as well, even though they don't work at General Motors,
Right. They may work for like a supplier or whatnot, right?
And not only them, but I'm talking about, back home, I have 2 sons. And so, one is going to be 12, Jake, and Jordan is 9 years old and autistic. And so trying to understand, where is dad? How's he going there? And he's coming back here and going there and coming back here. That's what I'm more worried about, And, their mom, she's going to nursing school and at the same time picking up the slack while I'm up here. And so, it's, and her parents, my parents, everybody back at home that it continues to pitch in this situation. And then, I think about all the other people that, had to leave their plants to come to our plant. I think about, the fact that, it wasn't just, they keep saying 1,600 people got, laid off at Lordstown when they closed the plant. It's 4,500 people. They shut down the third shift, and then months later they shut down the second shift, and then months later they shuttered the plant, or they unallocated the plant, whatever that means. And so, when that happened, that's 4,500 people going in every different direction, from Wentzville, Missouri to Nashville or goes on.
And, general public to read an article in the paper and be like, oh, well, they're getting 10. those GM people, the general public doesn't typically have much sympathy for the General Motors employees.
We're rich.
We're rich.
Yeah.
But what they don't understand is that $10,000 isn't enough to uproot your family and move to a complete new area.
Right.
I mean, you can't buy a house with $10,000.
No.
And so it's not as simple and cut and dry as people think it is.
No, it's you have to sit there, and literally when they made the announcement, it was literally the day we came back from Thanksgiving break in November of 2018. A gentleman from Detroit walked up on a platform, and within 3 minutes or less, let us know that we were done, and walked off the platform and was. You're just sitting there looking at each other like, Merry Christmas, and again, you see this happen all over corporate America. It's not just us, right? But it's now happening to you. So in the moment, I literally pulled out a notebook and started writing notes on what the different graphing things. People were laughing at me, but I was trying to.
What were your choices?
There was so many different choices. There was literally walk away from General Motors with 5 years to go towards a pension. Folks, I know it sounds, those are the dinosaur years when pensions were available in this country, but I still am one of those people that are lucky enough to have a pension. So do I walk away from the pension that I could have in 5 years, retire when I'm 53 years old or so, and relative for dreams I'm trying to chase at the same time, or do I go wherever they're going to place me? So I kept playing the waiting game. I have my bachelor's degree, and I applied to go back to college for my MBA, which I got accepted. And then a buddy of mine who is retired Air Force, he now works as a civilian contractor for the military. And he was trying to work with me to get my resume together and applications in all around the United States when it came to going into that line of work. That's a long process. Well, while that process was going on and I had just received word that I was accepted into the MBA program, General Motors came to me and said, you have exactly this much time to make a decision. Are you walking away from General Motors, or you can go to here, here, here? And I saw Lansing Delta. So I pulled out the map. I started thinking to myself, how's this going to work? Is it going to be basic striking distance between Lansing and Youngstown, Ohio? Do I have striking distance to get back and forth as much as I possibly can? Because the other places were Wentzville, Missouri, Bowling Green, Kentucky, Arlington, Texas, and I never would have made it home. So I wanted Toledo, 2.5 hours away, but then I said, well, I'm going to go with Lansing. I'm going to finish this out. Even my buddy said to me, the retired Air Force, he said, dude, go do this, finish, get your pension, come back home, and if you want, we could still work on, maybe seeing if there's still those jobs. Because basically, that's not my dream. It sounds like a pretty cool job, but my dream is doing what we're doing right now, right? And doing what I've been doing for 20 years outside of General Motors, which is running my own business, working as a trainer for young people, both mind, body, and soul, are all three together. And so, basically, when this all came down, number one thing. So when me and their mom sat down, we had to really, map this whole thing out. And it was a rough decision. It really was for a lot of people. There was even part of me that thought about going into physical therapy, but it wasn't a passion of mine, and so I thought, at some point, I hate to say be selfish, but don't just do something, that you're going to hate the rest of your life. Here I am now, and I hear a lot of horror stories in terms of what people have had to go through that I work with, that had to move away from family, that have their kids back here, but they are like 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 hours away. How rough they're going, through life right now, the decisions they've had to make, they don't have anything to fall back on, And so I think about how lucky I am. I think about the fact that, I can't think of the exact number, but I know for a fact we've lost at least 5 people that have died through this now.
Wow.
People can say statement. I'm saying that it's kind of ironic that from the time of this announcement till now, okay, we've had a couple of people take their own life at the plants that they were, moved to. We've had 2 or 3 people have heart attacks that are younger than me. And I know them personally, and I know the stress levels they were under, leaving their families, and how that was. And good people. We're talking about good people, and that really doesn't even matter. No one deserves to go through that. Mm-hmm. And, so I think to myself, and actually one gentleman is up here in Lansing where, his roommate came home and found him in bed, and then his wife and children had to drive up here, and what kind of drive is that? What goes on there trying to explain to the kids, So I think about that, and that's why when people say to me, my heart breaks for you, I'm lucky, That drive home, back and forth, which is 65 times tomorrow.
Jeez.
I'm thinking about writing a book, so I've been recording it,
Oh, really? Wow.
And I'm trying to think about what I'm going to call the book, but it's 285 miles one way.
That's what you should call it.
So I'm thinking about it, but but on my way back, what I do? I listen to Rise Above, right? This podcast with host David Hess, and I've listened to probably 13 or 14 of those episodes now. I listen to my 80s music. Yes, I'm a huge 70s and 80s guy, as most people know.
Do you still do the 70s and 80s music on nights on Facebook?
I haven't in a while, but I thought it was getting a little weird because people were requesting songs, and all I was doing was posting a link to the music. It wasn't like I actually was playing the music.
Right.
But people were getting mad if I did rock and roll 80s instead of like R&B, and I was
gosh.
I was getting messages like, why are you doing rock and roll 2 times in a row? And I'm like, I'm just posting music on Facebook, and you guys are like, I started feeling an obligation to it, But so and so that's what I do. I listen to my music. I listen to for TKS Athletics, which is my business. New customers, and we're off on the weekend in Lansing, and I train my athletes. I have 31 customers right now back at home, and so I send out an email every Tuesday. This date, and these are all the times that I'll be at the facility, and then people will text me, we want this time, and I fill up my schedule, and I've been lucky enough. I'll be going home for a month now because we're going to be shut down for retooling, mm-hmm. and I'll have a full schedule of training the entire time.
I think that's pretty remarkable. That it's. Hold on, I'm sorry. It's a stressful thing to have to travel back and forth mm-hmm. From Lordstown, or you're from Lordstown, right?
Well, I'm
Lordstown,
from
Youngstown.
Lordstown is a suburb of Youngstown, so to speak. So in other words, like kind of like my drive from Okemos to Lansing Delta is the same from the area of Youngstown. I'm from a small town. It's spelled like the soup, but we don't say it. We and so the same drive from Okemos to Lansing Delta is the same drive from Camel to Lordstown.
Okay.
So it's all in the same area of Youngstown, Ohio.
Well, it's got to be extremely stressful having to drive from Lansing all the way down to Camel, Ohio. Having to try to raise your boys and trying to raise them here while you're not even home. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've personally seen you coach them over Skype.
Yeah, over FaceTime Live, or not FaceTime Live, but we FaceTime.
Yeah.
It's very interesting, especially for their ages, when you're trying to talk to a soon-to-be 12-year-old and a 9-year-old, and you're telling them what they're doing wrong, and they walk away from the phone. And there's literally nothing you can do, right? And then their mother is screaming, your father is talking to you. And it's very interesting, but I give them all the credit in the world right now. Mm-hmm. Like the true heroes are going to be I don't think they're going to be able to appreciate that until they get older, what they've had to endure. They are the ones, if our CEO You know, if Mary Barrett came to me to shake my hand tomorrow, I would not shake her hand. I would tell her, you need to go to Lordstown, Youngstown, Ohio, and find Jacob and Jordan Sargianopoulos and shake their hand. Because your decisions, they're the ones who have endured this at such a young age and have done well, because a lot of kids are not doing well with this whole decision-making process.
How do you think this has affected your family dynamics as far as like you being able to parent and like kind of show your authority to your children?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because like my kids, like they think they can run rampant all the time,
Yeah.
and especially when I'm not around. Like they listen to me better than they do my wife.
Yeah.
But you know, I could imagine that when a father is gone and they know he's gone, he's out of town for an extended period of time,
Yeah.
that they think they could probably do whatever they want. What are those dynamics like?
So here's where I'm lucky. I always look at I try to always, people who know me personally really close know that there's times when I break down, right? But I try to stay as focused as possible. And I look at it like this, you know, in Lansing. 2 weeks later, we went on strike. I was home for 6 weeks. Then we came back. 2.5, 3 months later, COVID. Went back home for 3 months. All right. And kids with me the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And then, came back up here, and then we had several other situations, all right, where we were shut down for a while. This past summer, we were down for 3 months, 3.5 months. And so I look at it that way. We're going to be down for a month now. The kids have been up here about 10 times now, where we've had them up there. I have 2 roommates that have been fantastic. And Miss Liz to the kids. And so it's been lucky for me that I've been able was the closest and again the striking distance. As far as raising them, the dynamics and everything, I'm divorced, right? So and I think a lot of people think it's very strange, because when you see me and Shannon together with the boys, we don't always agree on everything, and we still argue. But the whole thing when we sat down was they have to have the best family dynamic despite the situation that we're in. And so we had already been preparing for this without even knowing it. And in 2 different households, and they had already been learning that process. So it's just the same thing now, except Dad's a little further away. But I break it down like a football game. Like when I go home in December, it's halftime. It's literally, I'm halfway there. And it was the first quarter, then the second quarter. So January, when I come back, they're going to know it's the third quarter. Mm-hmm. So, and this is what we expect in the third quarter. All right, Mom is finishing nursing school in May. This is going to be a rough 4 months for her. Dad's going to be back and forth. This is how we're going to run. And so it's like a game plan. Does it go perfect? No, it doesn't. And we need a lot of variables outside, like parents, grandparents help out a tremendous amount. I can't even explain to you how much people around us have helped out. Our babysitter, back home, she's been phenomenal. She's done things where she's picked them up at school on certain days for so many, weeks just to help us out. So you can't leave any of these people out of the equation. Again, when one person struggle, you have to look at all the dynamics all around them and all the people that are affected by that. And so this didn't just affect Tony Sarigianopoulos. This affected 4,500 people times probably 3, because of all those people that were affected. And again, the way I try to look at this is Lordstown's only one of how many plants now that have closed? Talking about Walmart, you start talking about Target, you start talking about all these companies, okay? They make business decisions, and they don't make them based on, is it going to benefit 1,000 people or 2,000 people? Yeah. That's not their focus.
I mean, you can go all the way back to General Motors down in Detroit, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it was a booming city back in the 70s and 80s and maybe even 90s, and now it's all like just flattened.
Yeah, and it seems like they're trying to remodel everything, their business model, and push everything back into that area, which I get it, and so everything, if you look at a map and you look at where GM is, like, Oklahoma City's gone. They had a plant in California that they sold to Elon Musk, which maybe have been a big mistake, right?
Then he closed it. I'm
Yeah,
pretty sure.
yeah. Well, I mean, not only that, but now you have the guy who's in basically the forefront of EV, electric vehicles. Although we say that we are, but we're not. And so it's kind of funny, but they're moving away from out west. It almost looks like a snake now with the GM plants where they're aligned, and it seems like everything is moving back towards Detroit. So maybe that's the game. What I do know, selfishly, is that I may be done. I'm trying to gear my game plan in that direction, and if I'm not done in 2023, then I tell the kids we may have to go in overtime, and overtime may be another year or two, and then we're definitely done. That is, hopefully not, what happens, but we have to keep that in the back of our mind that that may happen. So.
Yeah, that's got to be frustrating. I just want to comment on something real quick.
Yeah.
People are saying that the sound's cutting in and out of the live stream.
Oh.
I was wondering if you think I should just end the live stream and just record the rest.
So let me ask you a question. If you cut if you let the live stream go and then you put the recording, will that also be?
This is all recording, it'll still record.
No, so in other words, though, if you do the live stream and it cuts in and out, but then you post the recording later for your show, will it cut in and out?
I don't think so. No.
I guess you just stay with it, and as long as it's not going to do that to your show after you.
Okay, no,
post it.
I don't think so.
Okay.
I hope not. And then Cipriano said, "Are you guys really matching?"
But
oh my gosh. You've worked for GM for 20 some years, and you have a couple years to go. What's your game plan? You obviously own this business, training athletes.
Yeah.
What's your long-term goal with that? And then how's that going to tie into the podcast as well?
So TKS Athletics didn't come about really till 2014. In 2001, 2002, I met a gentleman at work, Dennis Peebles, who is a trainer, a certified professional trainer. And I was just finishing up in the sport of powerlifting. I did that for about 6 or 7 years. And we ended up working across from each other for a while. And he started talking to me about lifting. And then he started talking to me about a business that he does and wanted to know if I wanted to come aboard. Another gentleman, Mr. Mitch Zupko, who knew Dennis from high school, was doing the same thing. And so we formed our own business and we started working with athletes. Opinion, and people just go in their separate ways. Dennis and I kind of stuck together, and we met a gentleman by the name of Steve Holleran in this company called House of Speed. Started working with him. House of Speed didn't make it. It was a franchise. It just didn't make it. And so that's when I said, I love doing what I'm doing. I started getting all my certifications through International Sports Sciences Association, and I said, I'm going to keep doing this. And that's when I came up with TKS Athletics since 2014, and basically I stayed with it, and for 7 years now I've been doing it. And when GM was going to walk away, I said there's got to be a way that I keep doing this here, so that when I get here I can do this full time. What's the game plan? The game plan when I get home is to open it up to clinics, going to different area high schools, talking to athletic directors. I train out of 2 places right now. The main place is Sluggers of Ohio, which is it's in Poland, Ohio, which is right next to Camel, Ohio. And then another place, which is like it's called the Avalon Tennis Club. Kind of looks like the tennis facility Michigan State has.
Okay.
Right over here. Yeah. Yep. So it kind of looks the same way as that. And I train out of there occasionally as well. And then if I train a high school, I normally go to whatever facility they're at. So it was kind of ironic. One year I was training Howland Warren's soccer team. They were ranked 13th in the nation, and I think Okemos was ranked 14th. So I was telling the coach from Howland, and since then Howland's actually been ranked number 1 in the nation.
Oh wow!
Yeah, they won state once. I think they lost once and won once. I'm not sure, but and so I go to their facilities whenever that happens, or if I'm going to run a clinic, I might go to a different facility. I don't have my own facility. Is that something I might do in the future? I don't know, because I look at the logistics. I look at all the business sense and people who open facilities, and I look at the rate of success, and it's not very high once you open your own building.
Yeah.
There's so much that goes into that. It can't just be you going in there. You're going to have multi, usable. So
Right.
space in there, in signing contracts for long term, and you have to financially. It just seems like a nightmare. So I don't know that I'll ever do that. I really don't. Which is where, again, I'm lucky to have a pension, because that's money I could fall back on and not have to worry about making so much money, with the,
Right.
Yeah. So where does the podcast come in?
Well, let's kind of back up a little bit.
Sure.
Let's talk about how you got into fitness. I know that you have a past of powerlifting.
27 to 33 years old. It was about 6 years.
Let's talk about that
Okay.
for a little bit.
Um,
How'd you get into that?
So we actually did a show on Two Brothers One Mic about this. I started really getting into fitness when my dad, I'd go downstairs when I was in high school. I was 128 pounds soaking wet. I just was not a big guy at all. Never was tall. I'm 5'8" when the sun's out. And my dad lifting these weights and
Geez.
yeah. And so I'd see him lifting, and my dad was a strong guy. He put like two of us on one arm. Dad. And we got this thing called kind of like the Bowflex. It was like and I started gaining some weight. I got up to like 165 pounds when I got into college, and I started getting stronger. So a gym opened up in the town that I'm from. Different area cities, they'd start coming in, and there was these two big guys there. I mean, big dudes, and I was like, I always looked at them like, man, look at these guys, benching 450 for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 reps, and I would go over and do my weight. And one day, the one guy, he said to me, he goes, you should join. We're going to start doing a powerlifting team. We're going to start competing. You should join. And I thought, this guy got to be crazy. I thought he meant like the heavyweight division. They have like 165 pound, 181, 100, 198. So I thought, really, you think? And so he's like, yes. See where it goes. So I started lifting with these guys, and my strength went through the roof with these guys. I started benching, 380. I started squatting, around 500, deadlifting a little over 500, as the years went on. And 33 meets with a group of like 13 or 14 guys that basically changed the whole dynamic of my mindset the whole time. Something that I don't think they really understand. The gym was called Sensation Fitness and Tanning. And those guys really, I didn't understand what it meant to be part of a team or what it meant to sacrifice until those guys. And Mitch Zupko, who I mentioned earlier, was one of the guys who really changed the way I looked at things and viewed things and understood about this no quit attitude that I needed to have. Best trophy I ever received. I think I got first place like 6 or 7 times, but the best trophy I ever received was 5th place, which I don't like because my mindset is I'm old school, but I got this medal because the reason why I kept it was normally when I was younger, I would have quit. I would have said, you know what, I'm not good at this, I'm done. But I stayed with it for like 15, 16 more meets over the next several years. And so I said to myself, you know what, this is a pretty important moment right here. So I kept it somewhere upstairs in the attic, but
I was going to say you should put it right above your bed,
right
beside your head.
Yeah, my friends would never let me live that down. And so I actually kept my trophies out for a long time. Yeah, I kept my trophies out for a long time. And my friends were coming over for like New Year's Eve parties, and they would steal the trophies. And then they would take them with them to Florida and take pictures with them on the beach. And I'm like, and then I would go downstairs and I'd be like, wow, they are gone. Yeah, I never even realized it. So, that's just a funny story. But it's where I started realizing, I'm done quitting. That's it, and so I think that's where I get my crazy drive from that, some people just don't understand. they just don't people just don't get it, and I just tell people on.
Well, that's one thing I've always kind of noticed about you was ever since I met you. I know when you first came to our plant, you kind of had an attitude like you didn't want to be there, which I completely get.
Yeah.
But getting to know you, you talked about like your business and training to start like a YouTube channel talking about health and fitness,
Yeah.
and then that was kind of like the center of everything, and then it kind of formed into the podcast. And then you're constantly studying to get your certifications. Like You're always studying something.
With the International Sports Sciences, the thing about that was this. My degree is a business degree, and with a minor in marketing and selling. So it helps me out with my business, but it's not.
Where'd you get your degree from?
Youngstown State University.
Oh, okay.
And so, which is where I was accepted into the MBA program before I said I'm going to step away and go finish this. When I started doing my training, I said, well, I'm not going back to get my degree in exercise science for 4 years now. I need to find a reputable institution that is going to train me academically on understanding the human body and how it works. And that's when I found International Sports Sciences Association. And they are absolutely fantastic. And so I started working on all my certifications and writing essays and dissertations and working with mentors. And they're based out of Utah.
Okay.
And I'm actually going to get an associate's degree in exercise science with them. That's my next goal. But I have 5 certifications with them now in sports fitness nutrition, corrective exercise, youth fitness training, group fitness training, certified fitness training for all ages. And they really make you work. It takes 3 to 4 months to finish each. And that's if you really push it, It takes me sometimes 6 or 7 months just because everything else I got going on in my life just to finish everything.
Well, that's what I mean. This is back when we were working a lot of overtime, and I'm like, hey, what are you doing tonight? And you're like, I'm going home to study.
Yeah.
Or that's what I'm doing this weekend. I'm studying.
Yeah. I have no choice because if I didn't finish in a certain time, it's a penalty. You end up losing. These courses cost up to $780, $800. And again, it's a program that was found by Salaria. Celery. It sounds like celery. Sal Aria, Dr. Sal Aria, he was known as Dr. Squat back in the 70s, and I'm going completely blank on his name. Maybe it'll come to me in a minute, but he passed away several years ago. But the whole thing was, based on getting people into an accredited program to help them understand the science behind exercise. And it's helped me. It's benefited me tremendously over the years, big time. I've been working with ISSA now for, I want to say 13 or 14 years. So, and I love doing it. It's awesome.
I took a personal, I haven't got my certification yet, but I recommend it to anybody.
Yeah.
Just taking the course and just reading the book even is a great idea because you learn so much about the anatomy and the way you should train and different types of
NSCA, ISSA, very reputable institutions that most colleges, most NCAA colleges
they recognize it.
They recognize them. So that's definitely something that I saw, and so I jumped at it. And that's where I'm driven there. And so, like you were saying about the podcast, when I came up to Lansing, my brother Joe, he said to me, "We've got it now." Joe works with technical. Joe has a business. He works videography for weddings, graduation pictures. He does website development. He does business development and marketing with, doing different social media and stuff like that. And this is Joe's thing. Like this right here, Joe would be in heaven. All right. He'd be right while we were talking, he'd be over here trying to figure out what's going on, right. And his thing. And so Joe was like, we need to get you out further than Youngstown because if we're going to prepare you to your end game at General Motors, you can't just come home to Youngstown, Ohio, because unfortunately, Youngstown, Ohio is not to get you out further. And he said, how about a YouTube channel where you talk to people? Size. So I buy all this equipment, all his recommendation, cameras, lights, microphone, phone, facing the phone around the apartment where I'm at in Lansing. He's telling us where to do all the setting up, and this is how you got to leave it. And so I do about 6 YouTube, edit them.
Oh,
and
my gosh.
then all of a sudden one day he says, this isn't going to work. And I said, he said, this is crazy. We're not going to be able to keep up by doing this every week. What happens if you were stuck in Lansing for 3 weeks? And there's ways around that, but I am technologically ignorant. So me like sending Joe all these different, it ain't going to happen, right? I want to say it, you know. And he says, what about instead of a YouTube channel, what if we do a podcast? Now, my immediate reaction was to choke him. You know, I could see 1984 all over again with me and him just fist fighting down the steps into the basement, back up the stairs, the dog biting at our legs, you know, my mother screaming, go outside, you know, and so that's all I could see was red. And I said, what do you mean? I just bought all this equipment. He said, Liz, you know, hear me out. And he actually come up with a good idea. So I'm very skeptical at this point because Joe always used to tell me he's not the guy in front of the camera. He likes to be the guy behind. Comfortable with that.
Right.
So I'm thinking to myself, he's going to do this thing where it's going to be me and him. And the first name was The Average Joe.
Oh, that's awesome.
And the reason why was because Joe changed his entire physique by listening to me. But what I didn't know was he was doing all kind of research after I was telling him things. So he researched intermittent fasting, the ketogenic diet, all these exercises, all these different things. And he was doing all this research unbeknownst to me. I did not know that he was doing. Joe lost about 65 pounds. All right. Wow. And he got himself in really good shape, and he has, you know, these, and he talks about it on our podcast. The Fear of Anxiety is the one show where he talks about all the anxiety issues that he still battles, and how he overcomes that. And so we were going to call it The Average Joe because it was going to be a show about anybody. Do the work and look what you can do for yourself. You don't have to be a professional trainer. So the one guy was going to be the professional. The other guy was going to be the guy who has a completely different life, you know, in terms of his professional work, but was able to do the research. Too many people had The Average Joe.
What? Really?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And so I don't even remember how we came up with it, but, you know, we came up with Two Brothers, One Mike, and I don't even know how. I can't even think that it would be a different name now. You know, but it's not. What people don't understand is they think that eventually when we do something like this, because it's all audio right now.
Right.
They think they're going to see two guys sitting across the table and one mic coming down from the ceiling. And that's
just
not
a name. Just a name.
Yeah, it's the name is Two Brothers, One Mic because it's two brothers with one voice. So that's the concept. We're together and explaining our journeys. So that's where it comes from. It's not really one mic.
Right.
Yeah, I could see both of us up on top of one mic trying to talk. It would really look odd.
Keep passing it.
Yeah, back and forth. Although we might get more viewers laughing, but so you know, eventually, folks, if you ever watch Two Brothers One Mic, when we eventually have video, please understand there's going to be more than one mic. And so you know, we do our first show, and we do like 6 shows before we even talk about the fact that we're going to do a podcast. So on the first show, we do it back and forth. And then Joe sends me a link, and I listen to it. And I'm nervous. I'm thinking, this is going to sound really stupid. And I'm listening to Joe. I'm not even listening to me. And I'm like, damn, he sounds really good. Like, he sounded really good. I was totally stoked, to use whatever generation uses that word. Really good. I mean, like, I think he sounds better than me. when he's talking.
Yeah, listening to the podcast, he's natural. He's a born natural at it. I mean, he acts like he's done it forever.
Yeah.
Like your guys' first episode, I was like, wow, he's actually pretty good at this.
Yeah, and I was like, and that was what I was nervous about, because I thought he was nervous about that, and he's actually really good. And so that was when it was kind of funny, because we had 6 episodes ready to go, and we were going to make an announcement, and you announced like that week, that Rise Above was coming, and I told my brother, I go, but he's going to do a podcast, and so that's when I came to you. I go, guess what? It's what? Trying to that. And so that's why I wanted to tell you, we were kind of keeping it on the down low, because if it didn't work out, we didn't want to tell all these people that,
Right.
So we kind of literally came out at the same time.
Yeah,
Rise Above and Two Brothers, One Mic.
Yeah, I think I posted my first episode, it was January 29th or something like that. But then you've stayed consistent with it the whole time, this whole last year.
We're once a week.
Yeah. And then for me, since I do interviews, it's kind of spotty, I don't build them up. I do the interview and then I post it generally.
Yeah.
So there was a period of time where I didn't do any, and then we got laid off, and then I was like, I'm hitting this hard.
Yeah.
And that's what I did.
Well, that's where people. You ever notice my voice all of a sudden goes out and I'm 12 years old again? I don't know what that is. I always talk about that on the podcast too. I'm I don't understand why I go from 51 years old to 13 for a second, then I come back again. But
I always think my voice sounds weird on the podcast, and then I go back and listen. I'm like, oh, it doesn't sound that bad. Yeah, it sounds normal.
No, yeah, I think it sounds normal. But I don't know, for some reason mine, it just all of a sudden, I don't know, like Ross from Friends, he used to always do that. But so I mean, that's where we're at right now. The end game is to hopefully receive some type of, arbitration is going on right now with General Motors in Lordstown, and I believe Baltimore was another place they closed at the same time, and determination, and I don't know what they're going to offer. I mean, there's a lot of skeptical, everyone's skeptical, and some people are pessimistic, some people are optimistic.
Didn't they just sell the plant?
They sold the plant to Lordstown Motors.
And I believe they just sold it.
They joined forces with somebody, and I can't remember the name now. There's actually a lot of people from Lordstown that took a retirement package that was not offered until after we signed on a dotted line to go somewhere else. But that's okay, right? So there were a few that just took a chance, and God bless them, and so they're working at Lordstown Motors now because they want people who have a background. But
they're making less money.
Well, I don't know exactly what's going on. What I do know is they're not at full production right now. Every time I drive by, there's not a whole lot of cars in the parking lot. It's a very slow startup process, and sometimes I'll text a few of the guys and they seem optimistic. So it would be crazy for somebody who worked for General Motors, Lordstown, to want to see it fail. Mm-hmm. You don't want that. No. I mean, it's for Youngstown. You need that to work. But if people think that it's going to be a booming business that's going to bring Youngstown back, I just don't see, from a financial standpoint, I don't see what they're looking at. I mean, when you look at purchasing power, I try to explain this to people. You take people who are making $32 an hour. They take that money and they buy things. Mm-hmm. Now you got people making $18 an hour.
They're buying less things.
They're buying less things. They're buying cheaper things. I mean, I don't understand how nobody understands the trickle-down effect of that. Mm-hmm. I mean, so it really, and when I started at GM Lordstown, there were 10,000 people there. When the last group out was 1,600 people. How many people are going to work at Lordstown Motors? I don't know. The battery plant is going in for GM right next door to it. There's rumor they may offer us an opportunity to go back there, but
as second tier
for $18 an hour. I mean, I don't know. These are all the things that are going to be on the table that I'm hearing about. But when it comes to this business, rumor is lock in without the rumors starting.
Oh yeah, it's like high school.
Yeah, it's big time high school, and then now introducing social media, and we have our own page, and what a nightmare that becomes sometimes. It's complete comedy. Like I go on there and just post jokes. And I get like 65 people laughing at it. And the whole purpose is you have to laugh, you know, it's,
it's a shit show.
yeah. That's probably the best way to put it. In Greek, that'd be skata. That's what it is. It's what it is. That's what it is. I mean, it's people who, to me, social media, especially Facebook, is people who would never, if they were sitting around this table with us right now, ever say anything like they do when they're in their dark room in their underwear by themselves, just typing away, angrier than hell at everybody, you know. And so you gave them a way to reach out to the entire world now, and now millions of people are just giving their, advice. So you got to laugh. You just have to laugh at it.
Keyboard warriors are definitely strong behind the keyboard.
It's amazing to me.
It's oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So coming from the old GM, from the way GM used to be and how it is now, what are your opinions about that? I mean, because oftentimes, I'm a newer hire. I mean, I've been there for 8 years, but I'm part of the new GM. I was never hired in during the good old days, as everybody says. What were those like? And
the good old days were good and bad. I understand a lot of the. Listen, I'm gonna be very transparent. I'm gonna be very straightforward. I understand why the company had to make a lot of decisions they made in the early 2000s when they cut Oldsmobile. I know that was a big a big sore spot for a lot of people up here. And for you're losing jobs, and anytime you're losing jobs, that's not a good thing, especially for middle class America. But the company had too much fat, and that's all there is to it. Okay, this is the way I look at it, and this is my business degree talking right now. Okay, when you have a GMC Yukon and a Chevy Tahoe, they look exactly alike, and you're selling both. You have the Pontiac Sunbird, and you have the Chevy Cavalier. Had that in so many different lines with GM, and I think they were putting too much of the same out there. And people were tired of it. Customers were displaying dissatisfaction with that. So they started cutting back and cutting fat. And I think they were in over their head with the amount of money they were spending. And they were trying to hurry and get out of that situation 2000, 2001, 2002. And then the recession hit in 2008. And that put them in a bind because they weren't there yet. So what happened? The president had to make a very unpopular decision, right? And bail out the auto industry in terms of General Motors and Chrysler. And was it selfishly a good move on our part? Sure. Yeah. Way to go, President. I mean, thank you, and I think I understand where he's coming from, because if the auto industry would have failed, see, it's not really capitalism when you talk about capitalism. Capitalism is, we're going to give you an opportunity to start up your own business. And you're going to have to make the right decisions to make that business successful. Right. If you fail, you fail. We're not here as a government to bail you out. And so General Motors made some bad decisions. But I think what the president was looking at was there's over a million. And what can that do to the economy of this country? And so it's,
we're kind of seeing it now, right?
Mm-hmm.
With COVID. Yeah. I mean, we worked the whole time. Everybody was laid off for COVID.
For the most part, yeah.
And then, we were down for what, 2 months, 3 months?
3 months.
3 months. But then we went back full force.
Yeah.
And it actually hasn't hit us until recent. I guess this. But, I mean, you can kind of see the trickle-down effect from that happening. I mean, you drive around to any dealership, all the lots are empty. You can't buy a new vehicle.
I have everybody asking me, where are they? Well, they're sitting on our lots, 10, 12,000 deep, because we don't have wheel liners, we don't have this, we don't have that, because suppliers are having so many issues with getting the parts to us. And it's that trickle-down effect that we're experiencing. Everybody knows about the microchip situation. And so that's what we're dealing with right now. That's the nature of the game right now. And you have to really wonder what the decision-making process is at the highest levels and what the stress level is in making those decisions, because too many wrong decisions can really send this thing into a. But what is crazy is this: we're still on track to make just as much in profit this year as any other year, if not more. And so that's what always amazes me. When you talk about profitability, you're talking about the bills are paid. You're not talking about earnings before interest and taxes. You're not talking about net revenue. You're left. And when a company's making between 10 and 12 billion dollars a year through all of this, it's just amazing.
It is amazing.
I mean, it's just amazing that they're able to do that.
What do you think the future looks like as far as an auto worker, just a normal average auto worker who works the assembly line with the EVs coming?
Well,
I mean, we obviously can see it with Tesla. They have a lot less employees, but they're also creating jobs in other aspects, like they're going to be building a battery plant at our facility or near our facility.
Yes.
So what do you think that, how do you think that's going to affect us?
If I was to talk to a young person today, I would tell them, get some type of certification or background in a skilled trade. Understand, you know, whether it's electrician or, you know, carpentry, whatever it is, even plumbing, anything with that type of background, I think is going to become huge. If you're looking just to follow mom or dad into an auto plant to work on the assembly line,
not a good idea.
Those days are gone.
Yeah.
It's a ghost town. You know, it's a ghost town. It's tumbleweeds. When I started in 1993, there were 72 people. I remember this. I counted them one day because I couldn't believe it. There were 72 people on my line. Just 36. So it's just crazy. It's crazy. Taken over. I really think that the kids need to get a background in technology, you know, ITT, some type of technological background, computers and so on and so forth. And again, skilled trades work. I think that's going to be the future of, you know, building electrical vehicles. So
I guess moving forward, what do you, what's your goals with a podcast? I mean, obviously you talk about health and fitness, you talk about being the best you. Yeah. You've recently been interviewing people.
Yes.
What's your goals?
So, you know what I see, here's one thing. I'll give you a little bit of information here, but here's one thing I always believe in. Never just throw all your goals out there on the table for everybody to hear, because number one, and we talked about this in our podcast before, you sometimes people will do that just to get those thumbs up buttons and oh, awesome, that's awesome, go for it. And that's not what you want. And number two, if it doesn't come to fruition, all right, if it doesn't work, then you're kind of like standing there going, oops, sorry, never mind, you know.
And then it gives all your haters a place for them to be like, oh, you suck, you weren't able to do it anyways.
Let me tell you something. You don't know how bad we're waiting on our haters. We actually have one that we know of. We want 99 more. We want 100. And I'm going to tell you why, folks. And listen to me when I say this. Haters are a great marketing tool. They really are. Because what they do is they go tell everybody about how stupid your stuff is. Rise Above, that's the dumbest podcast I ever heard of in my life. That guy doesn't even know what he's doing. He interviews all these people. And then what happens? Out of those 10, 2 of them go listen. And one of them liked the show. You just gained another listener because of the hater. Yep. So that's the way I look at it. People's perception of you never have to be your reality. So I always say, anybody who's not listening or anybody who thinks that we do our podcast is dumb, that's okay. I mean, you don't have to like our podcast. It might not even be what maybe you're looking for, murder mystery podcasts and things of that nature. Those are pretty popular. But to go out, there's this one guy from our hometown that I know of because people come tell me that literally goes out and literally bashes us. And I'm just like,
really?
I'm like, is your life that bad? I mean, what
does he do?
I don't even know. You know why? Because I'm not worried about
not
what
paying
he's doing.
attention.
Yeah, it's just very strange to me because when somebody is putting that much energy into something like that, they have their own demons they have to deal with. So I just, I hope the best for him, and I hope he's telling as many people as possible, just so our numbers keep going up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, haters are definitely a motivation, right?
Oh, big time. Big time.
And yeah, you can't pay attention to that.
No.
I mean, you're going to do what you're going to do, and regardless of what people say on Facebook, it doesn't matter.
Facebook is definitely not even... Facebook, we actually have 5% of our listeners listen to us on Facebook podcasts. So it's kind of a cool marketing tool. But as far as my personal page is concerned, I think I have 1,000... I don't even know who 300 of them are. and
that's a lot of friends, though.
Yeah. I literally friends. But I just leave them
I'm
alone.
amazed that you're friends with the 900 more people.
Yeah. So that being said, out of all them people, I don't know how many people actually listen to our podcast. Our podcast is listened to in 10 different countries right now. So I'm not worried about, I'd love to have all 1,150 some people listening to my podcast. I'm sure my brother would feel the same exact way if he was sitting here right now. Mm-hmm. But we can't like hope. When we go on Facebook and talk about our podcast, it's just another avenue that we're using on top of everything else. My goal one day is to get off of the personal part of Facebook and just go to my Two Brothers One Mike page, and that's where we do all our discussion.
That'd be healthier. Yeah,
very much so. Right now, we use it for other avenues right now, and so
you kind of have to. I mean, it's a free tool. Why not?
Yeah.
I use it for promotion. That's actually pretty much all I use it for is promotion for the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'll go on just to make people laugh and say something stupid.
Yeah.
And it's really just making. I saw one guy the other day, I think he gave a 15-paragraph dissertation on mask or no mask. And I couldn't believe the arguing that was going on for like 75, 76 comments right after that. I mean, these people were angry with each other. And I can't understand how that happens. But
who has time for all that?
Apparently they do.
Sometimes I'll go on like a post like that, and I'll just look at the comments. I'm like, who has time to sit here and comment? And then they'll like, somebody will argue with them, and then they'll argue back with them, and it just goes on and on and on. I'm like, what the heck?
Yeah, it's crazy. So, I mean, everyone has their different uses of Facebook. We're trying to use it for, comedy and to get, and apparently 80s and 70s night music is a big hit for me. So,
and you kind of tie some of that into your podcast as well, right?
As far as
like doing like trivia and like
we do. I told my brother I'm not doing the podcast unless you let me somehow tie in 80s and 70s stuff, and he just rolled his eyes like, "Are you serious?" And so, in season 1, we were just throwing things in there in the beginning of the show. Just like John Hughes movies, The Breakfast Clubs, and and it wasn't tying to the show. So in season 2, he said, you've got to tie whatever you're using to the show somehow. So that's what we do now. We try to use whatever we're talking about. We try to use that for whatever, is going to happen with carnivore diet, which I want to ask you a question about real quick before we're done here today. We had the carnivore diet, so I was like, what can I do to, tie something in here from the 80s? And there was a commercial. I don't know if you've ever seen the commercial. It's Where's the Beef from Wendy's. Where's the Beef?
Yep.
So I was like, Where's the Beef? That lady from the Wendy's commercial. And so that was what I tied in to the beginning of the carnivore diet show. And so that's how I have to make sure, I have to make sure we tie it in. And I get that. That makes sense because it flows a lot better. But I want to ask you, one of the shows I listened to not that long ago on my way back home to Youngstown for Rise Above was a gentleman who owns Redemption Fitness. Is that what it is?
Yep.
I know he started talking about nutrition a little bit, and you spoke about the carnivore diet.
Yep.
So we did a show on the carnivore diet, and then we had an interview with Amber Landsman Butcher. She's an exercise fitness guru. Academically, her background is extensive, and a colleague of mine, and so she talked about it. How's it working out for you, the carnivore diet?
Well, I guess it's not working out too well.
I'm the interviewer now.
I haven't done it in a while. I think I've been off of it for about a year.
Okay.
But I eat still mainly meat and eggs.
Okay.
I eat pretty much everything though. I eat steak and eggs.
I got you.
So I'll just grill up like a flank steak or 2 flank steaks a week, and then I'll just chop it up and take that every single day and fry up eggs or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's pretty much all I eat for the most part. And then for like dinner, I'll just eat like mainly meat, but I'll have like a potato or some vegetables.
So you sprinkle a little bit in there.
Yeah.
And I was just curious when you were talking about that. I said I'm going to ask him on the podcast.
But when I was eating energy, and that I actually felt stronger. Like during my lifts, during my workouts, I felt like it was, I don't know, it was weird. Like I felt aggressive. Like I could lift more weight. Like I could push more weight.
And we talk about that. And again, on our podcast, we talk about all the eating lifestyles, whether it's ketogenic, paleo, Mediterranean, carnivore, vegetarian. we introduce everything to everybody, intermittent fasting, how they can work together, and so on and so forth.
You're a big proponent of intermittent fasting.
I'm a huge proponent of that. Yes.
You intermittent fast pretty much every day or every week?
You have to play around with it. And when I was doing it every day, I started losing too much weight. So now what I do is I do 2 days a week. I do a 20-hour fast. So I do a 20 and 4 on Mondays and Thursdays.
How does that make you feel?
Great. I've been able to maintain my weight at 182 pounds for a long period of time now. Because if I eat too much, I think I'll get up to, I think there was times when I was close to 210 pounds. So I got down to 174, and I said, I started seeing that 128 pound kid again, and I didn't like it. I like that 180 range, 185. So 182, again, 5'8", soaking wet, obviously it's a joke. 5'8" soaking wet should be how much I weigh soaking wet, but I'm purposely doing that. But it work. I love it. It works out for me great.
And how does it make you feel during your workouts?
What I love is the 2 days that I intermittent fast, I work out before I break my fast. So I've already gone 20 hours almost. And there's so much, when you look at all the studies with intermittent fasting, all the benefits that come with working out while your body's already burning fat times 10 in that process. The workout just goes and doubles that, So you're burning body fat left and right. And a lot of people are worried about muscle tissue and burning lean muscle tissue. And folks, your body's not burning lean muscle tissue at that point in time. Your body knows better than to do that. It's burning body fat. We talk about it a lot on our show, and a person who I love listening to is Dr. Jason Fung. Have you ever listened to his podcast
No,
before?
I haven't, no.
Him and Thomas DeLore, he talks a lot about intermittent fasting. But we talk about it on our show, and it's amazing all the things that people have a misconception about and how good it can be for you if you do it the right way. There's a lot of myths out there on why it's bad for you. Now, it's not good for everybody. So you have to do your research. Mm-hmm. That's the biggest thing about our podcast. We tell people we can lead you to the hill. Right? If you fall back down, we'll catch you, but we're not going to keep carrying you up the hill. People don't want to do the research. You know, they don't want to sit down and do the work. And that's just unfortunate because you have to do the work.
That's why I like your guys' podcast so much, because you're not telling people what they should be doing. You're telling people like, hey, this is
an option.
This is an option. And it's not the only option. It's not the right option. It's not the wrong option, but it's an option that you could try.
Right.
And you should probably research it for yourself and try it yourself.
Yeah.
And maybe even under the advice of like a dietitian or, whatever.
Family, we always make that disclaimer, always your family doctor, physician, dietitian, nutritionist. You need to sit down with people and say, hey, listen, people who know your medical background, this is where I'm at. This is what I want to try. Maybe we can meet more often and you can, take my vitals and see in directions I'm going while I try this and things of that nature. Very important.
There's definitely a need for that because a lot of people have a misconception of health and fitness. They think that if you're intermittent fasting, you're going to get skinny. Yeah. Or if you're like you work, this is one thing my brother used to tell me, because he wanted to put on muscle, and I'm like, well, you should definitely lift heavy. Yeah. And eat a lot of protein, like chicken and whatnot. But he's like, I'd get big if I maintain. You're not going to get huge.
Well, maintaining is different than gaining. There's different avenues there. And boy, we could do a whole other podcast about that.
Yeah, that's a whole other.
Yeah, when you talk about concentric, eccentric, and isometric training, and how you lift to gain, and then obviously with your nutritional gains, how many calories you're eating in, and so on and so forth. Is that Cipriano again?
It is.
Yeah.
Sip said, "Tell that man to try my diet."
Yeah. Sep is a beast. I'll give him that. I'll give him that. But how old is he? 23.
Something like that. Sip, how old are you?
So I mean, he's literally, I'm almost 30 years older than him. I'm gonna have a push-up contest with him before I move back home. So I mean, basically that's what it's all about. Our podcast. It's about getting out to the people and talking about from shoulders down is important, nutrition and exercise. But if you don't have it here, all right, if this isn't working, it doesn't matter because you're done. Ton of listeners about nutrition and exercise, And then you see it drop down when we start doing the show about the best you and about overcoming when we have our clinical psychologist, Dr. Nicole Rentilla on, and she talks about integral fear and inner, all these different types of fear and how you overcome them. If she's on, people will listen. If it's just me and Joe talking about it, it's less. And then, but not as much. People don't listen when we have interviews with people, professionals, and it has anything to do with the brain. They don't listen as much as if we're going to talk about intermittent fasting.
Really?
It's like they think we're going to give them the magic pill, but they don't want to know about what they're going to need to do here in order for that magic pill to work.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to wait. Everybody wants, like that.
Right.
If you're heavier, you're going to lose weight quick.
Yeah.
We work with a gentleman. He lost 90 some pounds, 95 pounds.
Wow.
So, if not more. It works, not for everybody, but give it a shot, I say.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, wrapping this up, do you have anything else you want to talk?
The best you, for a reason. And that's really
Sip's 24, by the way.
24. Okay. So I'm more than double his age. And so, what I want to say as far as being the best you is this. I think I'm talking about, overcoming, my situation, how I've been doing it. And all the people, juggle all that at the same time.
Right.
At the end of the day, you have to live in the moment and do one thing that I always tell my athletes when I train. I train them. I tell them, win the battle before you win the war. And that's the thing. Too many people look at the end game, the end of the work day. We do that all the time at work. Look, you keep looking at the clock, looking at line time, trying to figure out how can make them go faster.
I don't. It's not healthy.
Try not to. And people can't wait. We do a show on Two Brothers One Mic. Thank God it's Friday. Why is everyone so concerned about Friday? What happened to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday? You have to start winning the day, right? You have to win the battle before you win the war.
Yeah.
If I keep looking at the end game when I'm going to retire, I'm going to miss out on everything. Games, their school concerts, Christmas concerts, all those things that are happening in between, all the relationships at work, and the things that we talk about and joke about. You miss out on all of that because you're so worried about the end game. So if there was one thing I hope everyone got from the show, it's win the battle, right? All right, before you win the war. And that would basically be it. Be the best you.
I think that's a good point because a lot of like Joe Rogan's talked about on his podcast, Rents do every single day.
Yeah.
And in order to be successful in your day, you should probably strive to do something difficult every single day.
Yeah.
Like whether it's working out or like studying for something like a test that's coming up.
Yeah.
You should always search for something that's difficult because then it helps all the other stuff.
Yeah, it does.
It doesn't seem so.
Your mindset is you're training your mind, and that's the most important thing that he's probably trying to get out to everybody. You have 86,400 seconds in one day, and use them. They're there for a reason. So that would be basically the best way to be the best you, I think.
Awesome. Where can people find your podcast?
Two Brothers, One Mic. We are off of Anchor. Not very many people listen to us on Anchor, though. They listen to most of us. They listen, I want to say the highest percentage listens to us on Spotify and then Apple Podcast. We're on Facebook Podcast, Castbox on there, and some other smaller ones, Google podcast. Yep. So if you go in there and search Two Brothers One Mic, you can see my ugly face and my brother just standing there in our podcast, whatever you want to call it, description.
And then are you on social media? Obviously you said Facebook, but do you have an Instagram or anything like that?
We don't. We have Two Brothers One Mic on Facebook. That'd be the next move we make, and then one day we'll be on YouTube. Cool. And go from there.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. I love doing it.